Hi everyone, welcome to this second webinar of the year, and today it's all about setting up objectives. So let me share with you what we're going to be covering during the next 20 minutes or so. First, I'll introduce myself very briefly, then we'll dive into objective. We'll look at the SMART principle of setting up objectives, and I'll give you some questions to help yourself do that. I'll also give you some good examples. And I'll touch on stretch assignments. After I finished with the presentation, I'll stop the recording and there will be plenty of time for question and answers. Okay, so without further ado, this is me, Marie-Claude Boucher, and I work mostly with leadership development for middle managers, first-time leads, leaders, team leads, aspiring leaders. And I also work with personal development, focusing on building resilience and mental well-being. Let's now that's done, let's look at what we're doing today in the context of the performance management life cycle. So today we are here on setting up objectives. So last month we looked at translating the strategy and the associated leadership skills coming with that were all about providing a vision, displaying business acumen, and translating complex information. Okay, so that was to do with translating the strategy. Today, with setting up objectives, we look at different leadership skills, and they are mostly related with inspiring and motivating others, showing ambition, and also building engagement. So this is what we're looking at today. Also, when you look at what we're going to be covering today, I want you to think with two hats. And the first hat is your hat as an individual working for an organization. So think about your objectives in terms of your personal objectives. You know, what am I going to contribute? What am I going to be doing this year? And then the second hat is your hat as a manager and thinking about every single team member that you have, what needs to happen for every single one of them. Okay. So last month, we talked about vision, mission, strategy, and objectives. And today we're really looking at the objectives, the company's objectives that should have been cascaded down probably in January. So you should have, by now, you should have your team objectives, and you should have an idea of how, you know, your team is going to contribute to the overall strategy, and how you personally as an individual are going to contribute towards the team objectives. In an ideal world, this is a two-way conversation. Yeah, so you have an idea of how you want to contribute, and your manager has an idea of how they want you to contribute. You have a meeting, and usually it's like you, me, agree. So, hey, I would like to work on this. I think it's a good idea. Yes, I agree. And maybe you could do a bit more of that. And I was also thinking about that. Yes, we both agree. And here are the objectives. Yeah. So in an ideal world, objectives, it's a two-way discussions where you both agree, your managers and yourself, you both agree on the final objective. And this way you feel involved and you understand how your contribution is actually part of the bigger picture. And this is for you as an individual, and it applies for your team members as well. Okay, so if we think about an objective, what is it? It's basically a statement that describes what an organization, a team, or an individual is planning to achieve. And that's it. And I want you to think about something when you're thinking about your objective, and it's the two elements that should be present within any kind of objectives. And the first one is your role, and it's the what, which means the what, the concretely, what is it that I need to achieve? And the other one that sometimes we tend to forget is the how. Yeah, and the how is linked to your company values to your ways of working, the behaviors that your organization encourages, yeah, all those things. And those two elements form part of an objective. So most company have objectives, and within each objective there is a what element and there is a how element. However, some other organization might decide to do it differently, where they have purely what objectives and some how objectives as well, displaying the values. In an ideal world, you should aim between 3 to 6 objectives. That's a good average to have for a whole year. So we often talk about objectives, and we often talk about the SMART methodology of setting up objectives. And I've worked with a lot of managers who kind of found it very difficult to apply this methodology, because they always tend to think, I have to write my objective into one sentence. And the answer is no, just keep it simple. Yeah, it's okay to have the description of what it is you want to try to achieve. And it's okay to have bullet points for, your measures. And it's okay to have bullet points for the dates when you will have achieved the objectives. It's fine. You don't have to do it in one line. Okay, so let's dive into more specifically, what do we mean by SMART? So the first one, it's specific. So basically what you want to do with specific is write down a statement of what it is you're trying to achieve. Yeah, and put as much detail as you can in that statement. Then think about how you're going to monitor your progress. So what measures are you looking at? What KPIs are you looking at? Yeah, how will you know that you've achieved what you set up to do? Then ask yourself, is it achievable? Have I got enough time? Have I got the skill? Have I got the capabilities to achieve this? Followed by, is it relevant? So the relevant part is very, very important. So what you want to make sure is that your objective is aligned. It is aligned to the company's objectives in the strategy. Do not set up objectives that are not aligned to anything, because you will have limited impact. And I'm going to touch on that a bit later. And finally, timed. What's the deadlines? What are the key target dates? And what is the deadline to finish the objectives? So some questions that you might want to consider for each one of these areas. So if we're looking specifically, ask yourself, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? Who is going to be involved? What's the purpose? What are the key benefits? And just write it down. And then think about, how am I going to measure, and usually you're thinking about questions which are how much, how many, how often, what percentage. Basically, you're asking yourself, how will I know when it is completed? And then think about, how can it be accomplished? What resources will I need? And this is a very good question. Have I got the capability and capacity to do that? And when we say capability, we also mean maybe I haven't got it right now, but maybe by doing something, I can actually develop the capability to be able to do it. Okay? And then, is it relevant? So as I said before, is it aligned with the business strategy and the objective? Is it worthwhile? And how much impact does it have? So this is a very important question you might want to remember. How much impact does this thing have? Because when we come to the end of the year and we come to evaluation and distribution of scores and those kind of things, a lot of organizations these days have got a measure and a way of attributing scores based on impact. So just make sure that whatever you're working on has got some impact. And then times, what are the key milestones and what is the end date? So those are the kind of things you want to ask yourself. I'm going to share with you an example of a perfectly good objective. I said to you it didn't have to be written down in one sentence, and unfortunately it is here, so well, maybe fortunately. So here is a good example. So by the end of Q3, sell 35% more high quality family sports product compared to last year in the 4 stores located in malls to take advantage of the effect of a municipal multi-sport tournament that will happen in my city in June, July. Okay, so this is very, very specific. So you've got a lot of details here. Obviously, maybe we're talking about a family-owned sporting goods business with 4 different locations, probably in a big city because they've got malls and they've got 4 stores. So we're looking at the overall objective, which is very, very specific. Then you're asking yourself, is it measurable? Well, actually, yes, it is measurable because what you want is a 35% increase year on year. Is it achievable? So that's an interesting question. Okay. And if you think about the context of 2020, let's go back 1 year and let's imagine it's February 2020 and you're setting up this objective. At the time, yes, it was. But we all know what happened with the health crisis, with all the restrictions put in place. Towards mid-year, and we'll talk about that in the next webinar, when you review what has happened so far, this is probably an objective that if it had been set in 2020 would have needed to be changed. Yeah, so it would have probably been changed towards the 4 store located in the malls to something more online. Okay, so always be very aware of the political, the economical context in which you're setting up objectives. So those are some of the things you might want to think about. Keeping on, is it relevant? Yeah, it's very relevant. The example is based on a company selling sporting goods. There is a sporting event, tournament happening, and they're going to be increasing their sales via doing some marketing promotions around this. And it's all in the objective. So yes, it's very relevant. And is it timed? Yes, by the end of Q3, we'll know. Okay, and under your objectives, usually you've got your main actions that kind of come down. Okay, so this is an example of really good objective using the SMART methodology. And I'm going to come back to that in a second because I want to talk a little bit about stretch assignments. So stretch assignments, usually different organizations use them in different ways. I have used them as part of the talent management programs as a way of developing high potentials. So once your high potential have been identified, then stretch assignments are put in place to help with their development. The other way in which you might want to use them is when you're setting up objectives, because one of the role of a manager is to develop its people. Yeah, so there's lots of things that are in your job description, such as, writing and setting up objectives. That's in your job description. But there's a lot of things that are not in the job description. And I think for me, what's important is to realize that as a manager, one of the key things that you're going to be doing is developing your people. And in order for you to develop your people, you need to be aware of, what are their skills? What are the areas of improvement? What's the stretch? What motivates them? And to keep all that in mind whenever you're writing your objectives. So basically, a stretch assignment is a challenging development experience, and it's a project that can in itself be a way of reaching an objective. So once you think about, your team members or so think about each and every one of them as an individual and think about, what are the skills that this person has? What are their areas of development? Where's the stretch? What motivates them? And think about all the objectives that your team is trying to achieve and have a little think about how could I stretch that person with what kind of project, what kind of assignment could I develop this person? And I'm going to give you an example because I'm going to come back on the objectives that we have, so it's going to make sense for you. This takes a lot of work and it's nowhere to be found in your job description. So stay with me here. So whenever you're developing a stretch assignment, you need to think about the 70-20 rule, sorry. So 70% of all the learning, the development that we get as individual happens from doing it. So it happens on the job by trying out new things, by having feedback and, by learning from mistakes. So 70% is in the what, what it is that I'm actually doing, what it is that I'm actually practicing. Then 20% comes with the support. Yeah, so what mechanisms are in place to support me if I don't know something? Who can coach me? Who can mentor me? Who can I go to get some additional information? And then 10% comes from more formal things such as, communication guides, online courses, reading materials, and models I can use, and so on. So when you think about a stretch assignment, you need to think about an objective and go a little bit deeper. So we said that each person should have an average of 3 to 6 objectives. So what you want to do, you want to take one of these objectives and go a little bit deeper and make it a little bit more stretching. So to generate development, to generate a stretch. Okay, so if I go back to the objective that I had before. So let's imagine that this objective is actually a team objective. So it's a company business and there's a small marketing team. And within the small marketing team, let's think that you have a junior person. And let's call this person Alana. So Alana is a junior person and she joined the company probably about a year ago. And you know that Alana has got some really amazing skills, and she's really, really good with project management and everything that comes with analyzing data and planning the project management planning phase, analyzing data. She's good at spotting trends. She's really good with social media. She's really good with creating complex reports. She's really good working kind of just on her own. Yeah. And you know that Alana, what would benefit development is all about meeting more people, developing a network, working in collaboration with others, being a little bit more creative. Okay, so those are the skills that you would like Alana to develop. So when you look at these objectives and some of the things that, need to happen, some of the main action, you might think, okay, so I'd like Alana to work on one of the digital marketing campaigns and to own that bit rather than just do some bits of it. You might think, okay, I can include her in the whole process. So when we're going to be looking at the project planning, we're going to look at planning the whole thing. She's not only going to be in charge of planning all the activities of when they're going to happen and this, she's going to be in charge of actually doing some stakeholder management. She's going to be in charge of communication. She's going to be in charge of collaborating with more people to do that. And then she's going to have to reach out to people. She's going to have to create some focus group. All those skills, that build on top of what she already has, but that are going to be the stretch. So you're going to build on that digital marketing campaign to create that stretch. And Within all that, you're going to think about, okay, what support mechanisms are in place? And some of the support mechanism might be, okay, I am going to be your point of reference for coaching. So if you have any coaching questions, if you have, any question, you can always come to me. But there's also this lady who works in procurement that's going to help you with suppliers and things like this. And if you have any questions related to that, you go and see her. And I'm going to give you a mentor. So there's this mentor, this person is going to be your mentor. You're going to be meeting with them once a month, and they're going to be able to take you through the whole process of making this campaign work because they have experience and they've done it in the past. So those are all the things that I'm putting in place that are there to support you. And then lastly, think about, the resources, the 10%. So there's other projects that we've done in the past, and you can have access to all the database of all the projects and how we've done them and what worked and what didn't work. There's also e-learning available. There's also guides that you can use and point the person to the right direction. So what you've done, rather than just giving one very dry objective, you've actually thought a little bit deeper and made this objective into a stretch assignment. Yeah, and through this, she's going to be able to develop creativity, develop a network, develop collaboration and communication. Yeah, which are all the things you wanted her to work on. So this is the beauty of stretch assignments. So think a little bit about that. In the members area, there's a very detailed worksheet on stretch assignment where I give you 5 areas to look at. And I also give you a way of measuring the stretch in order to see that it's not too big of a stretch, because it could be demotivating if it is. Okay, so I think that's the end of our session today. You can connect with me on LinkedIn via the website. I've got all the details here. I'm going to stop the recording now, and please feel free to turn on your cameras and microphone, and then we'll take it from there. Thanks.